Hello everyone, and welcome to my very first video here on my channel. Before we start the video proper, allow me to explain how this channel is going to work. Basically, I've taken every game that I have in my collection that I have played before and added it to a randomizer thanks to the website The Backloggery. I'll have the website randomly select a game from my collection. Once it does, I'll replay the game, taking note of various aspects of what I enjoyed and what I did not enjoy from my revisit. Once that's done, I'll then rank the game. Not out of 10, but compared to the other games that I reviewed. This journey is going to be a long one that I can't see myself ever truly reaching the end of, due to how many games I have and all the games I'm sure I'll add to my collection in the future. Nevertheless, it's a journey I'm excited to try, and hopefully anyone watching it will enjoy it as well. Alright, now that we have all the channel details out of the way, let's begin with our first ever retrospective. The game chosen by the randomizer is Alien Isolation for the Xbox 360. I just want to start by saying that I love the Aliens franchise. The original film Alien and its sequel Aliens are among some of my all-time favorite movies, and the xenomorph itself easily is one of the most iconic designs in science fiction. I've watched all the films, for better and for worse, collected a bunch of the various Dark Horse comics, read several Aliens novels, and I even have a number of the action figures made by NECA, my favorite being the Mantis xenomorph. So needless to say, I'm a pretty big fan of Aliens. When Alien Isolation was first announced, I was cautiously optimistic. The gameplay looked interesting, and I love that they were going with just one alien this time around, to really make the just one xenomorph feel like a significant threat, just like in the first film. However, the last Alien game released before Isolation was Aliens Colonial Marines, a game infamous for its bugs, terrible AI, and frankly just being an all-around bad game. Alien Isolation had a lot of work to do if it wanted to redeem the Alien video game franchise. Was it successful? Let's take a look. The story takes place 15 years after the events of the first movie, where we play as Amanda Ripley's daughter, Ellen Ripley. After 15 years of her mother being missing, Ripley is informed that the flight recorder from her mother's ship has been discovered and is being held on the space station known as the Sevastopol. Hoping to discover the whereabouts of her mother, Ripley and a small crew set out to retrieve the flight recorder. However, as soon as the crew attempts to board, disaster strikes, causing Ripley to be separated from her teammates and alone aboard the desolate ship. Ripley learns that something terrible is happening on the station. Most of the station seems to be out of power, paranoid people aboard the ship seem to be at war with each other, and the Working Joe androids are killing the very crew they were meant to serve. And if the odds weren't stacked against Ripley enough, there's also some strange creature aboard the ship, far more deadly than anything she has ever seen before. Now it's up to Ripley and a few survivors to make a plan to kill the xenomorph and find a way to escape the Sevastopol. As far as stories go in the Aliens universe, Aliens Isolation story is pretty standard fare. Group of survivors go to a location, there's an alien there, get out alive. There's nothing there that really fleshes out the lore of Aliens, nor does it break any new ground in any way. And honestly, it doesn't really need to. The story ultimately serves as a catalyst for the gameplay, to give us a reason to be aboard this ship in the first place, and I think it does a good job. Ellen Ripley's motivations for boarding the ship is compelling. She wants to know if her mother is alive, what her fate was after she disappeared all those years ago. Plus, I quite enjoy her interactions with the other survivors she meets along the way. The game's story has strong beats, and I still care for the other survivors and want them to get out just as much as Ripley. The game also goes out of its way to dedicate whole chapters just for world building and build up atmosphere, such as when we get to visit the Delarect ship through the lens of a big, bulky spacesuit. I also want to take a moment to gush about the game's visuals, as the game's environments are top-notch. Everything keeps that old-fashioned sci-fi look the movies had, from the walls of the ship to the designs of the various computers scattered across the station, to even the look of the motion tracker. Everything looks exactly the way an Aliens fan would hope it would, and it really should be commended just how much dedication the team had to making everything in this game feel as authentic as possible. As for the gameplay, I thought the gameplay of Alien Isolation was excellent. For the most part, Alien Isolation is a survival horror game, with a high emphasis on stealth. A lot of things aboard the Sevastopol want to kill you, and while you are given a handful of weapons to defend yourself, the weapons either don't deal a lot of damage, or they use limited resources that may be better to hold on to for a different situation. Ripley will encounter other survivors, or these creepy-looking Working Joe androids, which will try and kill her. The survivors aren't too bad to deal with individually, but when you encounter them, they're usually in decent-sized groups which you need to think about how to deal with. The Working Joes, on the other hand, can take quite a beating before going down. They walk really slow, but I found that these guys can track you for a really long time, which was kind of a pain to deal with. They can block a lot of your melee attacks, which force you to either use firearms or a stun baton, but the stun baton was really difficult to find ammo for, so I didn't get to use it too often. Still, they offered a nice bit of variety throughout the game, presenting different kinds of obstacles from each other, which gave scenarios a good feeling of variety, and never really found any overstaying their welcome. However, the real star of the show is the alien itself, and hoo boy, there's quite a bit to talk about here. As you reach certain areas of the game, the alien will exit the vent and begin searching the room looking for Ripley, and if he gets her, it's game over. When it drops down, where it will drop down, and where it will search are for the most part random, and that means you'll always need to be on your toes no matter what situation you're in. The alien is easily the most thrilling aspect of the game, and naturally where most of the scares come from. With the alien being so unpredictable, I was always on edge entering a new room. Hearing the slow footsteps of the alien walking around and its soft hissing as you hope to God it doesn't see you was genuinely terrifying. And just because the alien isn't in the room doesn't mean you can drop your guard. Sometimes you'll see a sickly looking saliva dripping down from the vents. This means the alien is actually waiting right in the vent, and if you walk under it, you're dead. So not only do you need to be cautious of the alien moving around the various rooms, but you also need to be aware of each and every vent you walk under. What adds to the tension is the fact that Alien Isolation doesn't work on a checkpoint system. Rather, it uses save points. To many players, the need for a save point in a game like this may feel a bit archaic, but it felt like an intentional design decision. If the alien or one of the other enemies aboard the ship manages to get the better of you, you won't just pop back to the start of the room, but you'll need to restart from wherever you last saved. Now you're not just scared because of needing to start over, but you may need to go through some difficult situations over again. While overall I do like the decision for a save system, for increasing fear during a given situation, I won't pretend it's perfect. For the most part, the game does a good job at giving plenty of save points, so you won't need to go back too far if you die. However, there can be long bouts of game with no save points in sight, or ones that are hidden a bit off the beaten path. Losing a lot of progress during these moments can start to become frustrating, especially if you die multiple times in the same section, and it can cause players, myself included, to get more aggravated and more likely to make mistakes. Like I said, for the most part, save stations are distributed fairly, but in the instances where they are not, it can start to become a lot less fun. And this game isn't easy either. Even on the lower difficulties, the AI, the alien especially, can be very aggressive, hearing any sound you make with frightening accuracy, and it's always on the move. The game provides you with a motion tracker, which can let you know if the alien is nearby. However, a cool detail is whenever you're using the motion tracker, the alien can hear the beeping the machine makes. If the alien is close by, and you get too careless with the motion tracker, the alien will start scouring the room for you, and you may end up leading him right to you. The most incredible aspect of Alien Isolation is the amount of options you can use to approach any given situation. You can approach each situation with a bit more of a traditional approach to stealth, waiting behind or around objects until the right moment presents itself to move forward. Alternatively, you can use tools to distract the enemies and make a break for it while their backs are turned. Heck, if you have a keen eye, you can spot various vents along the walls of the ship, which you can crawl in to go undetected for a fair distance. One of my favorite things to do was in situations where I saw that there was a large group of survivors in an area that can be tricky to sneak past. I would either fire a gunshot or throw a noisemaker towards them and immediately book it to the nearest hiding space. In most cases, the noise I just made would attract the alien to the area, who would then begin to tear into the group of survivors, effectively eliminating the problem entirely. Of course, this now meant I had to deal with the alien instead, who was certainly a lot deadlier than the survivors, but it also meant I only had to avoid one target, as opposed to 4 or 5 at a time. That's my biggest praise to Alien Isolation, it's how much choice the player is given. If a plan doesn't work out the first time, you're free to try it the same way again, or you can think of a different strategy. Because there's so many options, it's easy to replay chapters without the scenario feeling stale, because there's usually something new to try. That being said, alongside my nitpicks I mentioned earlier, I do have one larger complaint about the game, which kept it from being a perfect experience in my eyes. I think the game goes on a bit longer than it needs to. While I praise the game for having chapters dedicated to building up atmosphere and world building, there's a point in the game where, without getting into too many spoilers, it feels like it hits a really good endpoint, and if the game stopped there, I would have been satisfied. However, the game then introduces a new situation that has to be dealt with, which extends the game by what felt like another 7 or 8 hours. While I do think this new situation is actually pretty cool, by that point I was starting to feel pretty burnt out with the gameplay, and knowing I had basically hit the halfway point made me feel exhausted. This is more of a complaint of personal preference, as I know for many others, more playtime is not a bad thing, and I totally get that. It's just that personally, I would have found myself wanting to go back and play Alien Isolation far more if it was a much more tightly packed experience, rather than the much longer one it turned out to be. Despite this complaint, I still love Alien Isolation. It has a simple yet engaging story which really makes you feel a part of the Aliens universe. And the gameplay finds a way of giving so many options to the player while still feeling genuinely terrifying to experience. Alien Isolation is among the best survivor horror games I have personally played, and I thoroughly enjoyed going back and experiencing it again. Since Alien Isolation is the only game that has been a part of this retrospective so far, that means that it's earned itself the number 1 spot in the ranking by default, a spot I take no issue with it holding for a while. So the way this is going to work is once I finish reviewing the next game in this retrospective, I'm going to compare it to Alien Isolation and see if I thought it was better or worse. And that'll either keep Alien Isolation in the number 1 spot or bring it down to number 2. The goal is that as I continue to review these games and continue to add them to the ranking, it'll get bigger and bigger and start to make this big ranking list of just my preferences with games. I just think it'd be something really fun to do. But yeah, that was Alien Isolation. I'm really happy that the first game for these series of videos was something I enjoyed. Have a positive start to the channel and all that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video and listening to my rambles about this really fun game. I've never really done anything like this before, and it's both exciting and terrifying at the same time. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and if even one person had fun with this video as well, then I'm happy. Thank you again for watching. Take care, and hopefully we'll see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.